Hi guys and welcome to Lazy People Boring History. Tonight we step inside the walls of a Roman fort at the edge of the known world, where the torches burn low along stone corridors and the air carries the smell of iron, wet wool, and something older that the stone itself seems to hold. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to close your eyes knowing that tomorrow would begin before the sun rises? That your body would be required to do extraordinary things, and that no one would ask how you felt about any of it? Or what it meant to sleep surrounded by 7 other men in a room barely large enough for all of you, in a place so far from where you were born that the language spoken outside the walls is one you have not yet fully learned? So before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as you listen tonight, I would love for you to share your location and local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights, settle in, and let the story carry you. Rest is already on its way. You are standing at the entrance to your barracks room, one hand resting against the wooden doorframe, taking in the small space that the Roman military has assigned to you and 7 other men. The room is perhaps 4 meters wide and 5 meters deep, its walls constructed from carefully cut stone that has absorbed decades of cold and lampblack and the slow accumulated presence of soldiers who came before you and will be followed by soldiers who come after. The floor is stone as well, partially covered near the bunks by rough woven mats that do very little to soften it but mark the small territories of personal space that each man has staked out over time. You have been here long enough to know exactly where your mat ends and where the next man begins. The bunks are arranged in 2 tiers along the walls, 8 in total. Narrow and constructed from timber that was probably local, cut from whatever forest stood nearest to the fort when it was built. Each one has a straw mattress compressed by use into something that retains the vague shape of a mattress without many of its qualities. Yours is the lower bunk on the left wall, close enough to the small window that in summer you receive a thin strip of morning light across your feet before anyone else in the room, and in winter you receive the cold that comes through the gap in the shutter with the same impartiality. You have learned to arrange your blanket accordingly. The Roman military was one of the most organized institutions the ancient world produced. And this organization extended into the most intimate details of daily life, including where and how soldiers slept. The basic unit of the Roman army was not the legion itself, which could number in the thousands, but the contubernium, a group of 8 men who shared a room in the barracks. A tent on campaign, cooking duties, equipment storage, and the kind of enforced familiarity that produces either deep loyalty or lasting irritation, and often both simultaneously. Historians who have studied the physical remains of Roman forts across the former empire, from the Scottish Highlands to the Egyptian desert, have noted the remarkable consistency of these barracks rooms. They were designed not for comfort but for efficiency, and they achieved their purpose with a thoroughness that characterized most things the Roman military set out to achieve. You move inside and close the door behind you. The latch drops with a sound you could reproduce in your sleep. And have, because in the first months of your service you dreamed constantly about the sounds of the barracks, the specific acoustic signature of this room and its routines, as though your sleeping mind was still trying to memorize what your waking mind had not yet fully absorbed. That phase passed. Now these sounds mean nothing more than what they are. The door is closed. The day is outside. For a few hours, you are in here, and that is sufficient. You sit on the edge of your bunk and begin the process of removing your equipment. This is done in a specific order that you follow not because anyone has told you the order but because over time you have discovered the order that makes sense, that places the heaviest items down first and the most fragile last. That keeps the floor clear and the armor stand loaded in the way that allows you to gear up again quickly if the night trumpet calls an alarm. The lorica segmentata comes first, the segmented plate armor that covers your torso and shoulders. Its iron plates connected by leather straps that you unhook methodically, working from the front fastenings inward. The armor is not heavy in the way that people who have never worn it imagine it to be. It is heavy in the way that something worn all day every day becomes heavy. Not in any single moment, but in the accumulated weight of hours. You set it on the stand in the corner. The metal has the particular warmth of something that has been against your body for most of a day. And as it leaves you, the cold of the room begins to find the spaces it occupied. You notice this every time. The immediate, subtle reclaiming of your body by the temperature of the air around you. The room asserts itself the moment you stop carrying so much of it on your back. Your helmet, the iron galea with its cheek guards and neck plate, goes on the hook above the armor stand. The leather liner inside it is damp from a day of wear and will not fully dry by morning. This is a condition you share with every soldier in every fort along the frontier, and probably always have and probably always will, and you stop being bothered by it sometime in your second year of service. You stop being bothered by many things in your second year of service. This is either a sign of adaptation or a sign of something else. And you have decided that the distinction does not matter practically because neither interpretation changes the helmet. The caligay, the heavy sandals with their hobnailed soles that have carried you across an acreage of stone and packed earth that you could not begin to estimate, are placed near the door where they will be available quickly in the morning. The hobnails against the floor produce a sound that every Roman soldier associates with the beginning of things. The start of a march, the assembly in the fort's courtyard, the beginning of a day that will ask a great deal of your body before it releases you back to this room. You have come to find the sound almost comforting in the way that things you cannot change become comforting. It means you are still here. You are still in it. Around you, the other 7 men are performing their own versions of this same sequence. The room fills with the layered sounds of equipment being removed and stored. Leather straps buckled and unbuckled, metal placed against metal with the careful quiet of men who are tired and do not want to make more noise than necessary. No one speaks much at this hour. The day has used up most of what there was to say, and what remains will keep until morning or will dissolve in sleep. Before morning arrives, which amounts to the same thing. Words are expensive at this hour. No one spends them unnecessarily. Gaius, who has the bunk above yours and joined the Legion 3 years before you did, is already lying down, his blanket pulled up to his chin, his eyes closed in a way that might be sleep or might be the pre-sleep state he has perfected over years of service, a kind of practiced stillness that conserves energy even when full unconsciousness has not yet arrived. You have watched him do this often enough to recognize it. He is very good at the mechanics of survival. He would say there is nothing remarkable about this, that it is simply what the work requires, and he would be correct. You have learned a great deal from watching Gaius manage himself. You lie back against your mattress and pull your own blanket up, tucking it around your shoulders in the way you have learned to do, sealing the edges where the cold comes in most efficiently. The wool is coarse against your chin. It has been washed enough times that the lanolin is largely gone, and what remains is the raw texture of the fiber itself. Scratchy in a way that you no longer register as unpleasant, simply as present. The blanket is yours. It smells like yours. It has the specific weight and drape of something that has conformed over time to your particular way of sleeping. In a life that offers very little that is personally yours, this is not a small thing. The Roman military issued standard equipment and basic clothing to its soldiers, though the specifics changed across the centuries of the empire's existence. In the 1st and 2nd centuries, the period that most people picture when they think of Rome at its height, a legionary soldier received his equipment through the legion's quartermaster but was required to pay for it from his salary through a system of deductions that also covered food, replacement equipment, and contributions to the burial club that would fund his funeral if it became necessary. The salary of a Roman legionary was not large, and after deductions it was smaller still. But it was regular, and it was guaranteed in a way that work outside the military rarely was. This reliability was one of the reasons men enlisted, and one of the reasons they stayed even when the reasons they had originally enlisted had long since ceased to feel relevant. The torch on the wall outside your room has begun to burn lower. You can tell by the quality of light that comes through the gap beneath the door. Shifting from a steady orange to something more fitful, the flame consuming the last of the oil in the holder. In an hour it will be dark in the corridor. The sentry at the gatehouse will note the time and the watch will continue its rotation. And you will be asleep, or close enough to it that the distinction will not matter to anyone. The torch outside does not know your schedule. It burns on its own terms and goes out when it goes out. Your right shoulder aches. It always aches by this point in the day. The scutum, the large curved rectangular shield that a legionary carries through a leather arm strap attached to a horizontal wooden grip, creates a consistent lateral load on the shield arm that accumulates over hours of marching and drill. The centurion this afternoon had them holding the testudo formation for what felt like an unreasonable amount of time. The overlapping shield wall that turns a group of soldiers into something resembling a large armed tortoise. And your shoulder registered its opinion of this clearly and has continued to do so through the evening. You rotate it slowly against the mattress, feeling the catch and release of tired muscle. And then you stop rotating it because the small improvement is not worth the effort of maintaining attention on it. Flavius, in the bunk across from yours, has already begun to snore. It is not a loud snore, but it is a consistent one, a soft rhythmic sound that enters the room's atmosphere and becomes part of it within minutes. In the first weeks you found this maddening. Now you find it almost organizing, a steady pulse beneath the other sounds of the room. A sign that at least one person here has successfully made the transition from the day to the night, and that the transition is therefore possible. You will make it shortly. You have made it every night so far. There is no particular reason tonight should be different. The fortress that contains your barracks room is a permanent installation. A legionary fort built to house an entire legion and its supporting staff. Which means several thousand people living within a structured enclosure that includes not only barracks but a headquarters building, a hospital, granaries, workshops, stables, bathhouses, and the residence of the legate who commands the entire operation. The fort was laid out according to standard Roman military principles. Its streets running in a precise grid, its buildings positioned according to function and hierarchy. Its walls reinforced at regular intervals with towers that allow defenders to observe the approaches from multiple angles. You could describe this layout in your sleep. You have walked every street of it in every weather and every season. You know which parts of the Via Principalis flood when the rain is heavy and which section of the north wall is drafty. In a specific way that makes watch duty there particularly unpleasant in winter. Roman military discipline extended into the night hours in ways that modern readers sometimes find surprising. Night watches were divided into 4 segments, called vigiliae, each approximately 3 hours long depending on the season and the length of the night. Soldiers on watch duty were required to patrol their sections of the walls and report to senior officers who conducted random checks to confirm that the watch was being maintained. The penalties for sleeping on watch were severe, including beating by fellow soldiers in extreme cases. A punishment known as fustuarium. This was not a system designed for comfort. It was designed for reliability, and reliability in the Roman military was not considered a preference. It was considered a minimum. Tonight you are not on watch. Tonight belongs to you, or at least the 6 hours of it that remain. You feel the weight of your blanket across your chest. The straw beneath you has settled into a shallow impression that corresponds roughly to your body. A personalized unevenness that has formed over months. It is not soft, but it is known. There is a comfort in the familiar that has nothing to do with luxury. A quiet reassurance in the fact that this specific discomfort belongs to you and you know exactly how to lie within it. Familiarity is its own kind of softness. The physical conditioning required to sustain a life of marching and combat was developed through training that began from the moment of enlistment and continued throughout a soldier's service. New recruits marched under weight, increasing gradually as their fitness improved. They practiced weapon drill until the movements were automatic. They built fortifications, dug drainage channels, constructed roads, and performed the enormous quantity of maintenance and infrastructure work that the Roman military required to function. A Roman soldier was not simply a fighter. He was an engineer, a laborer, a craftsman, and a bureaucrat in addition to his combat role. And all of these functions were performed by the same body that was expected to march 30 kilometers in the morning, and then dig a defensive ditch in the afternoon. Your body knows all of this. It has absorbed it over years and carries the knowledge in its muscles and joints, in the calluses on your hands and feet, in the specific patterns of tension in your shoulders and back that a physician, if he examined you, would recognize as the signature of a man who has carried heavy loads over long distances for an extended period of time. You are, in the most literal sense, built by your service. The shape you are in now is a shape that the Roman military made, and it would be unrecognizable to the person you were before you enlisted. If you could stand the two of you together and compare, that person would not know what to do with the body you now inhabit. The man in the top bunk on the far side of the room, a soldier from a province in the eastern part of the empire whose name you have learned to pronounce correctly only recently, is speaking quietly in his sleep. The words are in his own language, not Latin, and they have the cadence of conversation, of something being explained or asked. He does not do this every night, but often enough that none of the other men find it remarkable. The legions drew soldiers from across the empire and beyond it, men who enlisted speaking a dozen different languages and were required to learn military Latin, the simplified and standardized form of the language that served as the operational tongue of the army. They learned it to varying degrees of fluency. In sleep, the native language often returned, and no one in a barracks room full of men from different corners of the world found it strange. Your eyes are fully closed now. The darkness behind them is the same darkness as the room, complete and without gradation. The kind of dark that only exists far from cities where firelight and lamplight thin the night into something less than itself. In the city where you grew up, you cannot remember ever experiencing darkness like this. There was always some source of light somewhere, always the city's ambient glow leaking into even the darkest room, through gaps and under doors. Here, when the torches burn out and the shutters are closed, the dark is genuine and total. And the first time you experienced it, you lay awake for some time before your body decided that it was safe to sleep in. This kind of dark, that the absence of light was not itself a threat. Now it is simply the condition in which you sleep. Letters recovered from Roman forts along Hadrian's Wall, most famously from the site of Vindolanda in what is now northern England, provide an extraordinary window into the daily concerns of soldiers and their families in the late 1st and early 2nd centuries. Among these documents are requests from soldiers stationed at the frontier asking family members to send warm clothing. Socks appear in these letters. Underpants appear. A particularly well-preserved letter requests that the recipient send more warm cloaks if they can be found at a reasonable price. The historical record, which can seem at times to consist entirely of battles and emperors and the movements of armies across vast distances, is interrupted by these small domestic requests in a way that makes the distance of 2,000 years feel suddenly much shorter. A soldier at Vindolanda was cold. His feet were cold. He wrote home about it. These are things that require no translation across any distance of time. You think of home occasionally, in the way that something far away surfaces in the mind without invitation and sits there for a moment before the mind moves on to something more immediately relevant. Home has become an abstract thing for you now, a collection of sensory memories rather than a place you expect to return to in any near future. The smell of a particular kind of cooking that you have not smelled since you left. The sound of a specific market on a specific morning. A face or two, older now in your imagination than in your memory. Aging in your mind as you age in theirs. Both of you carrying forward an image of the other that corresponds to a moment several years in the past. The letters that arrive intermittently confirm that the people are still there. That the place still exists, and that they think of you in roughly the way you think of them. Which is to say, with warmth and at a distance, and without the clarity that proximity would provide. The muscles of your back release slowly, the tension unwinding layer by layer as the mattress accepts your weight, and the position you have found becomes familiar enough to stop requiring adjustments. This is the process that you recognize now as the beginning of genuine rest. The sequential relaxation that moves from the surface inward as your nervous system accepts that the threats of the day are behind you and that nothing is currently required. Your jaw unclenches. The tension around your eyes softens. Your hands, which have been slightly curled at your sides in the way that the body holds its readiness even in rest, open against the blanket and stay open. The night watch system in the Roman army was formalized and documented, which means we know a considerable amount about how it functioned. The night was divided into 4 watches, the vigiliae, each running approximately 3 hours depending on the season. Soldiers were assigned to watch duty on a rotating basis, and the centurion or an optio would conduct checks to confirm that sentries were awake and at their posts. The system of watchwords, a different password for each watch period, provided a means of verification that was simple to administer and difficult to fake. A soldier who could not produce the correct watchword was clearly somewhere he should not have been. The Roman military had efficient procedures for dealing with such situations, and the efficiency of these procedures was widely understood among the men who served. The fort at night smells different from the fort during the day. The daytime smell is active and layered, smoke from cooking fires and forges. Horses, the sharp smell of the latrines that are kept clean but cannot be made to smell like anything other than what they are, the smell of several thousand bodies engaged in physical work under sun and wind. At night these smells settle. They thin out. What remains is older and quieter, the smell of stone and timber and the particular mustiness of a building that has been inhabited continuously for decades, the cold metallic smell that comes off armor in a cold room. You breathe it without noticing. It is simply the smell of where you are, and where you are is the only place you currently need to be. The contubernium as a social unit has been studied by historians who note that it functioned as more than simply a housing arrangement. 8 men who shared every significant experience of military life for years developed relationships that were not quite friendship, not quite family, but something with elements of both. Shaped by the specific conditions of proximity and shared risk. The men in your room know things about you that no one else knows. The small involuntary things that a person reveals when they cannot be private. The sounds they make in sleep, the way they move when they are in pain. The things they say when they are angry enough to say what they actually think. You know these things about them in return. The knowledge creates a bond that is different from chosen connection but not less real for that. Outside the walls of the fort the night is proceeding in whatever way nights proceed in places you cannot see. The local population in the settlements that have grown up around the fort, the vicus that clusters near the main gate, is sleeping in its own arrangements. The frontier blurs things. Boundaries that seem clear on official documents are more permeable in daily life. And the community around the fort is a community of people who have found their various ways to the edge of things and built lives there, in the complicated shadow of the military installation that is simultaneously their patron and their reason for existing in this particular place. Your centurion is a man of approximately 40 years who has survived combat in 2 provinces and 3 emperors and carries the history of his service in the network of small scars on his forearms and the particular set of his jaw when he is displeased. He is not a cruel man. He is a demanding man, which in the context of the Roman military is the appropriate kind of man to be. His demands are always in service of the century's effectiveness, which is to say in service of your survival and the survival of the men around you. You understand this clearly. Understanding it does not make his morning inspections easier to stand through, but it provides a framework for the standing that makes the standing possible. The cold has deepened slightly as the night has progressed. The way cold deepens when the activity that was holding it at the edges of awareness ceases and the body's temperature drops towards sleep, and the difference between the room and the blanket becomes more perceptible. You pull the blanket tighter. The wool holds what warmth it has. Your breath returns warm against your face when you exhale close to the blanket's edge. This small recirculation of warmth is not nothing. In a cold room with a thin blanket, the warm air held close to the face is one of the things that makes sleep possible. And you have learned to appreciate things that make sleep possible with the same thoroughness that you learn to appreciate things that make the march possible. The question of how Roman soldiers actually slept has been examined carefully by historians and archaeologists who have worked across fort sites from Scotland to Syria. The physical evidence from places like Caerleon in Wales or Saalburg in Germany shows barracks rooms that were consistently small, consistently shared, and consistently positioned to allow rapid mobilization. This was not accidental. The Roman military system was built around the idea that a soldier's body was a tool of the state, to be maintained efficiently and deployed without delay. Rest was necessary because a tired soldier was a slower soldier, and a slower soldier was a liability, and liabilities in the Roman military were addressed with a directness that discouraged their recurrence. Roman forts were constructed according to a plan that was standardized enough that a soldier transferred from one fort to another could orient himself almost immediately upon arrival. The Principia, the headquarters building, occupied the center. The Praetorium, the commanding officer's residence, sat beside it. The granaries were positioned to be accessible but away from potential fire hazards. The hospital was designed for function, its rooms arranged to allow the movement of patients and the work of the military physicians whose competence varied considerably but whose presence represented a commitment to maintaining the fighting capacity of the men in a way that other ancient armies did not always share. The Roman military understood that a dead soldier could not march and a sick soldier marched poorly. And this understanding had practical consequences for how soldiers were treated. Your feet are cold. They are nearly always cold by this point in the evening, despite the woolen socks and the wool of the blanket tucked around them. The stone floor radiates cold upward through the frame of the bunk in a way that the mattress mitigates but does not eliminate, and your feet, being at the end of the structure furthest from your body's core, are the first to feel the deficit. You flex your toes slowly inside the socks, encouraging circulation. A habit you developed in your first winter here when the cold was still something you noticed rather than simply accepted, and that you have continued because it helps, modestly and reliably. In the way that small practical habits persist because they are worth slightly more than the effort required to maintain them. Tiberius, in the top bunk on the right side of the room, coughs once. A dry and perfunctory sound that he produces several times each night and that no one registers anymore. The air in the barracks is not particularly good air, being the air of a stone room in a cold climate inhabited by 8 men who generate moisture through breath and bodies and the slow work of living. The walls accumulate a faint dampness near the floor that the morning's opening of shutters does something to address, but never fully resolves. The straw in the mattresses adds its own contribution to the atmosphere. You breathe it without noticing because you have been breathing it long enough that noticing would require a deliberate effort that the evening does not demand from you. You turn slightly onto your side, the mattress shifting beneath you, the blanket following the movement and resealing around your shoulder. The position is better. The ache in your shoulder is less pronounced when the weight is distributed differently. The muscle no longer compressed between your body and the mattress but allowed to rest in a slightly more natural position. This is the small negotiation that sleep requires, the finding of the arrangement in which the body's complaints are quietest, the configuration that allows the nervous system to stand down from the vigilance it maintains during the day. The stars above this part of the world, which you can see on clear nights from the ramparts of the fort, are arranged in patterns that the men from different provinces of the empire identify differently. The soldiers from the eastern provinces have names for constellations that differ from the Roman names for the same stars. The soldiers from the far north see shapes in the sky that do not correspond to anything in the classical tradition. This plurality of cosmologies within the walls of a single fort is one of the many small ways in which the empire is more complicated than its official image suggests. Rome imposed a great deal of uniformity on the world it controlled. But it could not impose uniformity on the night sky, and the night sky above the fort contained every story anyone had ever told about it, all at once, regardless of which story was official. The Roman army ran on paperwork in a way that would not be out of place in a modern institution. Duty rosters, supply requisitions, correspondence with the provincial governor's office, records of soldiers' pay and deductions and accumulated savings, reports on the condition of equipment and buildings, logs of the daily watchword and the watch rotation. Officers spent significant portions of their time on administrative tasks, and even ordinary soldiers were required to be able to read and write to a functional standard. The empire depended on documentation. The documentation depended on literate soldiers. The soldiers were, among everything else they were, a writing class that happened to also march 30 kilometers a day when the situation required it. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps from the area of the stables, a horse shifts in its stall and the sound carries in that particular way it does when the air is damp and still. The watch on the ramparts continues its rotation. A door somewhere in the barracks block opens and closes quickly. Someone going to or returning from the latrines, and the brief sound of boots on stone fades back into the silence. The fort breathes around you, this enormous organized community of several thousand people. Most of them doing exactly what you are doing right now, lying in their bunks in rooms that smell like yours and sound like yours, their bodies asking for the same thing your body is asking for. Your breathing has slowed to the rate of near sleep, long and regular. Each exhale carrying less tension than the one before it. The blanket has warmed slightly from the heat of your body, not to comfort but to sufficiency, which tonight feels like enough. The mattress beneath you is what it has always been, compressed straw in a linen cover that has seen better days. But your body has adjusted its expectations downward in the way that bodies do when downward is the only direction available, and what remains after adjustment is a surface that supports your weight and allows rest. This is what it needs to do. You are not asleep yet, not completely. There is a layer of awareness that persists even as the deeper functions of your mind withdraw from active duty. A watchfulness that experienced soldiers develop over time and that never fully switches off even in the deepest rest. The centurions who have served the longest will tell you that you never truly stop listening. That some part of the trained soldier remains on watch even in sleep, monitoring the sounds of the environment for the things that should not be there. You believe this. You feel it in yourself. There is a part of you that is always on the ramparts, even when the rest of you is flat on a straw mattress with a blanket pulled to its chin. The straw in your mattress has settled over months into the specific impression that corresponds to your body. The slight hollows that mark where your hips and shoulders rest. The areas of compression that record your habitual sleeping position as clearly as a mold records the shape pressed into it. This personalization of the mattress is one of the small ways in which time spent in a place leaves its mark on that place. A record of presence that is modest and will not outlast the next occupant, but that exists for now as a kind of evidence that you were here, that you rested here, that your body had this particular shape and occupied this particular space for long enough to leave its impression. You are conscientious about your equipment. This is partly a matter of training and partly a matter of the specific kind of thinking that service encourages. The understanding that your survival in any given situation depends in part on the reliability of the things you carry into that situation, and that reliability is something you can directly influence through the care you take in the hours when no one is testing it. The soldier who discovers his straps are rotted when the formation closes has discovered this at the worst possible time. The soldier who checks his straps in the quiet of the barracks room on an evening when nothing is happening has ensured that the quiet evening is the time when the problem exists, which is a much better time for problems to exist. The night is deepest now, past the point where the previous day's events still feel close and before the point where tomorrow's obligations begin to assert themselves as near. This is the valley of the night, the hours that feel most genuinely removed from the demands of the waking world. And it is in this valley that sleep goes deepest and the body does its most thorough repair work, consolidating the day's physical experience into the tissue and bone that tomorrow will ask to perform again. You have learned to recognize this valley when you enter it. You have learned to let yourself go further in rather than holding to the shallower edges. The Roman army marched. This is the fact about Roman military life that all other facts orbit around. A standard day's march covered between 20 and 30 kilometers. Carried out in full kit that included armor, weapons, a shield, a pack containing rations, cooking equipment, personal items, and entrenching tools, with the total weight depending on the period and the situation but consistently substantial. The marching pace was approximately 5 Roman miles per hour, a rate that had to be maintained across varying terrain and changing weather. And the legions were expected to achieve this not occasionally but consistently. Day after day on campaign trails that could extend for weeks or months across terrain that varied from alpine passes to desert tracks to the sodden plains of the northern frontier. A dream begins to form, or the precursor of a dream, an image rather than a narrative. The sensation of open space that is not the enclosed space of the barracks. An openness that might be the memory of a place before your service or might be something the sleeping mind assembles from components that do not correspond to any specific memory. The image is faint, barely there, more a quality of light than a scene. Warm and horizontal, the kind of light that comes in the late afternoon in a place where the sun is not rationed by clouds and elevation the way it is rationed in this northern posting. The image fades before it becomes a dream. This is common in the early stages of sleep, the mind producing fragments that the barely conscious attention disperses before they can cohere into the fuller experience of the dreaming state. You let it go. You let the next thing go and the thing after that. The letting go is itself a kind of practice, not effortful but intentional. The choice to not pursue the thoughts that the mind generates in the edge hours between waking and sleeping. To allow them to form and pass without following them into the territory they would lead you to. Gaius, above you, shifts slightly in his sleep. The bunk frame transmits the movement downward to yours, a faint vibration that you register without waking. You have slept through considerably more than this. You have slept through storms and distant alarms and the sound of men returning from the canteen outside the fort's main gate at volumes that suggested complete indifference to the sleeping men around them. You have slept through things that would have woken the person you were before your service and that now register only as background information, assessed and dismissed without reaching full consciousness. The relationships between soldiers and the people of the Vicus are one of the subjects on which the historical evidence is both rich and fragmented. Soldiers were officially prohibited from legal marriage during service for most of the imperial period. A prohibition that was widely circumvented through informal arrangements that functioned in most practical respects like marriages and that were eventually regularized in the late 2nd century. The families that soldiers formed outside the walls, the women and children who existed in a legally ambiguous category, but a practically real one, represent a dimension of Roman military life that the official record acknowledges obliquely, and that archaeology and documentary evidence have helped to reconstruct with increasing clarity. The legions in the imperial period were citizen soldiers, technically, though citizenship was extended and adapted over time in ways that complicated that definition. Alongside the legions served auxiliary units recruited from non-citizen populations across the empire and its borders, cavalry units from North Africa and the Middle East, Infantry units from the Rhine frontier, archers from Syria, soldiers from Britannia serving in provinces on the Danube. The empire moved its soldiers across itself constantly, posting men far from their places of origin as a matter of deliberate policy, on the theory that soldiers fighting far from home had no local loyalties to compete with their loyalty to Rome. Whether this theory was correct is something historians still debate. The cold at your feet has reached an equilibrium with the blanket that registers as neither cold nor warm, simply as the absence of a complaint. The mattress beneath you is exactly as it has always been, and exactly as it always has been is a thing you can sleep on. The men around you breathe. The fort holds its shape around the men. The walls hold their ground around the fort. And outside the walls the night extends in every direction across the landscape that Rome has organized into provinces and roads and supply lines and tax districts, and that nature has organized into rivers and hills and weather that proceeds according to its own priorities regardless of the organizational preferences of any empire. Sleep moves through the room in waves. You feel the rhythm of it, the collective slowing of breath, the complete absence of purposeful movement. The particular quality of silence that human beings produce when they have released their hold on consciousness. You are part of this rhythm now, approaching its deepest point. Your body releasing the inventory of the day with the slow efficiency of an organism that has learned to rest quickly and completely, because the alternative is not resting at all. The body does not need encouragement to sleep when it is tired enough. It simply needs permission, and permission is what this hour gives. The morning trumpet is hours away. Its sound is not yet in the air. When it comes it will be precise and clear, and it will require everything of you that the day requires. And you will provide it because you have always provided it, and because the man you have become through your service is not a man who fails to provide what is required of him when it is required. But that is morning. This is now. Now is dark and quiet and sufficient. Your breath moves in and out. The blanket holds its warmth. The room contains its 8 men and their particular forms of unconsciousness. Their dreams and their silence and the small involuntary sounds of bodies doing the ancient necessary work of rest. The stars above the fort move in their slow arc, indifferent to empire and legions and the schedules of military life. The watch on the ramparts takes another step. Somewhere in the sleeping fort a man turns in his bunk and is still again. The cold does what cold does in the hours before dawn, deepening quietly toward its lowest point before the first pale suggestion of morning begins its slow return. The empire holds. The walls stand. The night continues. You are part of this. You have been part of it for years and will be part of it for years more. And tonight that continuity is not a constraint but a container. A structure within which the present moment can simply be itself, unremarkable and adequate and real. Your body at rest, your mind released, the night continuing around you without requiring anything further. The Roman soldier carried his religion with him the way he carried his equipment. Because both served the same ultimate purpose, the management of an environment that was large and indifferent and capable of producing outcomes that no amount of training could entirely predict. The official religion of the Roman state provided a framework of ritual observance that structured the military calendar, with festivals and sacrifices conducted by the unit's senior officers. Alongside the official religion, soldiers maintained a complex personal devotional life that drew on the traditions of their home provinces and the local beliefs of the places where they served. Small altars dedicated to gods with unfamiliar names appear throughout the archaeological record of the frontier forts. Dedications made by individual soldiers to deities who were asked to provide the things that military training could not guarantee: health, luck, safe return. The fort's temple, a small but carefully maintained structure near the Principia, contains the standards of the legion, the eagle and the lesser standards of the individual centuries, which are treated with a reverence that has practical as well as spiritual dimensions. The standards are the physical embodiment of the unit's identity and continuity. And their protection in combat is not a ceremonial obligation but a tactical one. A unit that loses its standard has lost something that cannot be replaced by any administrative action. You have seen men treat the standards with an attention that they do not give to their own equipment. Which tells you something about the nature of institutional loyalty and something else about the things that people choose to protect when they have to choose. The road that connects this fort to the provincial capital runs south and west through terrain you have marched several times. A hard surface of compacted gravel over a carefully engineered base of larger stones that keeps the road usable, even in the worst of the winter weather that this region produces. Roman roads were not built for the convenience of the people living alongside them, though they provided that incidentally. They were built for the rapid movement of troops and supplies, for the communication of orders across distances that would otherwise require weeks rather than days, for the physical expression of Rome's claim to have organized the landscape into something governable. You have walked this road in both directions and under several different sets of orders, and you know its surface the way. You know your bunk, by feel and by the specific complaints it produces from your joints over distance. The question of a soldier's inner life, what a Roman legionary actually thought about in the quiet moments of his service, is one that the historical record addresses only partially. The Vindolanda tablets give us practical concerns. Graffiti scratched on barrack walls gives us humor, opinion, and occasionally something that looks like longing. The dedications on altars give us the shape of individual anxieties translated into the language of petition. What we have less of is the unmediated interior, the thoughts that a man might have lying in his bunk in the dark before sleep came, the specific texture of what it felt like to be himself in that place at that time. You carry that interior. It will not survive you in any recoverable form. It exists only in the present tense, and it is yours entirely. The Via Principalis is quiet now, its stone surface empty of the foot traffic that makes it busy through the day. The administrative staff who work in the Principia have finished their evening duties and returned to their quarters. The legate's residence is dark, or nearly so. The bathhouse, which operates through most of the day and into the early evening, has closed. Its fires have been banked for the night and will be relit in the morning for the next cycle of use. The bathhouse is one of the amenities of fort life that the men value most explicitly. A place where the accumulated grime of military service can be addressed with warm water and the particular satisfaction of cleanliness recovered. The desire for a bath and the impossibility of having one immediately is one of the small recurring features of campaign life that soldiers mention when they describe what they missed. Your service will end eventually. This is a fact that you hold in the back of your mind, not as an object of desire but as a simple temporal reality. A date somewhere in the future on the far side of years of continued work. Discharged veterans of the Roman legions received various benefits depending on the period, including a cash payment, land in certain periods, and for those who had served as non-citizens, citizenship itself and the legitimization of any children they had fathered during their service. The practical question of what you will do with yourself after discharge is one you have not yet examined closely. Because it is too far away to be useful to examine, and because the examination tends to produce a blankness that is not entirely comfortable. The world outside the military is a world you left years ago, and that will have continued changing in your absence. You will need to learn it again. Tiberius, whose cough has subsided, is dreaming. You can tell by the slight irregularity in his breathing, the small pauses and changes of pace that distinguish dreaming sleep from dreamless sleep in people you have observed long enough to know the difference. What he dreams about you have no way of knowing and no reason to speculate. The dreams of soldiers on the frontier have been a subject of some interest to ancient writers and more interest to modern historians, who note that the psychological experience of prolonged service in an uncertain and sometimes violent environment would have produced in many soldiers exactly the kinds of sleep disturbances that we would recognize from our own understanding of human responses to stress and danger. The ancient world had no framework equivalent to what we now understand about the mind under long-term pressure. But the minds were there, processing the same experiences through whatever frameworks were available. The cold outside the walls tonight is the specific cold of this region in this season. Damp and penetrating in a way that dry cold is not, finding the gaps in clothing and armor and the spaces between. Layers that were sufficient against a drier chill. This is not the worst cold you have experienced in your service. The worst cold was during a winter campaign 3 years ago, in a valley between two ranges of hills where the wind came from a direction that no one had anticipated, and the supply wagons were 2 days behind and the temperature dropped overnight to something that turned the mud to stone and the water in the vessels to ice before morning. You remember lying in your tent that night, 8 men generating heat that the tent barely contained, and thinking that warmth was the only thing in the world worth thinking about. The thought was correct and it simplified everything. You have developed over years of service a specific relationship with discomfort that is different from the relationship you had with it before your service began. You do not enjoy discomfort. You have not learned to be indifferent to it. What you have learned is to assess it, to determine its source and its likely duration and its practical implications, and to allocate to it only the attention it actually requires rather than the attention that fear or frustration would direct toward it. This is not a philosophy. It is a skill. It was learned through practice in the way that weapon drill is learned through practice. By doing it badly first, and then less badly, and then with some degree of competence, and then, eventually, without having to think about it. The empire extends in every direction beyond these walls, its roads carrying their communications and their armies in their commerce, its cities conducting their business, its bureaucracy generating and processing its documentation, its distant capital containing the emperor and the senate and the thousands of people whose decisions eventually filter down to become the orders posted on your Principia's notice board each morning. All of it is happening right now, in the same moment that you are lying in this bunk with this blanket and this specific quality of dark around you. The empire does not pause while you sleep. It continues on its enormous scale, and your sleep is one of the 10,000 things happening within it at this moment. All of equal insignificance from the perspective of the whole and all of complete significance to the person experiencing them. The man from the eastern province has stopped speaking in his sleep. The room has settled into its quietest configuration, the one that occurs in the deep middle of the night when everyone has found their position and the small adjustments have all been made and nothing further is required from any of the bodies present. This configuration produces a particular quality of silence that you have come to recognize as the signature of genuine shared rest, the specific absence of purposeful sound that means 8 men have all released their hold on the day. Simultaneously, have all entered the territory of sleep far enough that the day cannot easily reach them. You are aware of your own breathing slowing, of the thoughts that have moved through your mind during this hour becoming less frequent and less urgent, of the ache in your shoulder becoming something you are aware of without being troubled by, of the cold at your feet settling into something that simply is rather than something that demands attention. The process of releasing the day is nearly complete. What remains is the body, its own quiet work, the repair and restoration that happens without your participation or supervision, the ancient competence of the organism maintaining itself through the night so that morning finds it adequate to what morning requires. Sleep comes the rest of the way. Not as an arrival but as a recognition that it was already here. That it has been building through the evening and through the quiet hours and through the slow release of the day's demands, and that what remains now is simply the fact of it, the body at rest. The mind released, the night continuing around you without requiring anything further from you. The body that the Roman military made. The sleep that the Roman military requires. The stone room, the thin blanket, the 7 men, the fort, the empire. And you, a soldier at the edge of the known world, doing the one thing that every soldier in every army in every age has always eventually had to do. Rest. Sweet dreams.